Hi, it's Monday. For some reason, an unknown reason, this wasn't connecting to the internet, and so I bothered Alexis first thing in the morning, and she came down and unplugged something from the switch and plugged in a different port, and it worked. And unplugged it and put it back in the original port, and now it worked like it did originally. And then she told me which buttons to push in which order to get things going, and I guess it's streaming and recording. Oh, here. I've got a bunch of little parts. Uh, I can paint some of these. Maybe I'll do that today. I've got a radiator hose and a container for window washer fluid and a stick shift and some door handles and the main component of the dashboard. This here with these gauges and the speedometer and things on it. And I've got this, and this still isn't right. The divot, the divot on the top is still there despite two attempts to fill it in. So I have to decide what to do about that because the filler I was using didn't fill it. Either that or it was softer than the surrounding plastic. And when I sanded it, it sanded it down. The texture is right. Okay, of that filler. That's why I like it because it matches the texture of the plastic. But there's still a hole there right on the top of the dash. So I've got some stuff to do there, and I'm just, yeah, just a bunch of little stuff to do. I'll just plug away at it, I guess, today and see if anything comes of it. This doesn't need to be in. Well, maybe it should be tiny little parts that are just begging to get lost. They're just sitting there going, bump into me and drop me on the floor, and I'll roll under the workbench, and you'll never see me again, and the car will be, yeah. And things like this are hard to paint, you know, because no, I'll try it. I'm gonna try some things. Just muttering here. I'm not gonna work on the dashboard probably today. I'm gonna put this in here. I might get to it. It's just going to be a challenge, serious challenge. These, I don't know what happened here. No, this just got screwed up. I don't know what happened there. It's like some of the, I really don't know. The part, why is it black? The part is white. The primer is white. Where did, where did black come from? Yes, it's going to screw this up. It's just a radiator hose, but still, really? I have no idea what that's about. Looks like there's always something. The main challenge today is just going to be getting these painted, because there's no place to hold on to them. What's that? This was chrome plated, and there's a flaw in the chrome plating. No, this is just going to continue to be Monday. So this needs to be black. The boot, the handle, the shift knob needs to be black. The rest of it needs to be kind of chrome colored. So which do I paint first? I guess I could paint the chrome part first. I can clip an alligator clip and hold it like this. And paint that chrome. And then I can paint the black parts. But if I get a little bit of the black onto the chrome, it's really hard to touch up. If I paint the black parts first, then the chrome won't cover it. Well, all of this, it just, what it says is that it needs to be done carefully so that there isn't much touch up that needs to be done. I'm thinking, either case, holding on to the part is the problem. Why is there, after they're primed, then flaws start showing up. In this case, this is, yeah. I'm just trying to think this through. If I paint the chrome part first and then clip it there, it could scratch the metallic paint, and then, the overpainting will show on the metallic more than it would on the flat black. So I think I'm going to paint the flat black parts first. Okay. And then paint the middle part after that. I think I can have it. No, that that's actually working. Um, is the clip actually grabbed the pin well enough. Did it first and then I messed it up. Okay. That's that's good. I can paint the metallic part first and then the black. Hopefully I can touch up back and forth. Um, this needs this and the washer fluid bag. This need to be painted on one side and then turned over and painted on the other. I'm just going to use fresh tape. And that's how those two are going to work. if I knew what I was doing, if I were, like, as I keep saying, a master model builder, these wouldn't be issues. I would know what to do, but I'm just some old guy making models in the basement, and pretty clearly I don't know what to do. So, I'm just gonna make stuff up as I go along, and if you're building models and you don't know what to do, and you and I are in the same sort of situation here, the same skill level, and then, I don't know, I mean, you might wanna make things up just like I'm doing here, or make it up on your own. So this is a radiator hose. It's got clamps on it. You can see the clamps like a little raised thing here. I'm gonna paint this flat black, and then, paint the clamps metallic. I think I'll use chainmail silver on that. These hold these up on the tape. They need to be on the tape, I guess, to hold them. I wanna get all the way to the thing is I wanna get all the way down to the edge, otherwise I'll have to do touching up after I put them on. There isn't really any good way to, hold them. So, I'm gonna try this. Um, there's this little slot. There's a little slot in the back of the door handle, the armrest, really. I'm gonna try to get this tape just in there like that, so that it doesn't, so it just barely holds onto it like that. Squeeze it in, but it doesn't go over the edge. Yeah, that kind of works. And then I can take an alligator clip. Hold it. Yeah. This is this is real life in the moment, problem solving, kind of. I mean, it's kind of solving a problem. More of a problem when I what I want and then bump it. What I need is this thing here. This is my holding thing for alligator clips. Oh yeah, there's this beast. That's the one that I almost destroyed. Um, that needs to be primed. I broke the tiny little thing off and then and cemented it back. The turn signal. So that needs to be primed. I'm just going to leave it on here. Leave it on here and prime it. Um, try not to break it again. Try not to break it again. That needs to be primed. So this, is the other reduced in size tape. Using a toothpick to push it into that little groove so it kind of adheres. Hoping it kind of adheres. Which it didn't. Oh, and there's what's up with that excess primer on there? It's a rough surface that needs to be cleaned off. And this would have worked if it's stuck. Okay, I'm actually going to keep these in the box while I'm painting them, even if it's awkward. Because if they happen to pop off of the alligator cliffs, they're going to go flying, and if they go flying, there's a chance that they will get caught in the box. If they get caught in the box, they won't end up on the floor. Yeah, I need black paint, flat black paint. It would be good if I painted the chrome part. No, I'm just going to end up wasting paint here no matter what I do. So that is what it's going to be. I know I'm going to set that somewhere. I'm going to break it off again and not know it until it's too late. And then I've got the seats here. I painted the metallic part, but it needs a second coat. You can see it's kind of uneven and scabby looking. So I'm going to use a different paint on this than that. I'm going to use the chrome metallic, the metallic paint. I think it'll look better. But the silver, I needed to use the silver paint on these other bits because this doesn't adhere very well to the black underneath. Oh yeah, the other thing, this actually did work. I think you can kind of see it here, see the shiny spot, and it maintained it stayed convex. This this is on the steering wheel. I'll show it to you on the real steering wheel. A picture of the real steering wheel. There's a hub in the middle, which does not exist on the steering wheel that came with the kit. It's painted black and then white in the center. And then there's a clear bubble, like a plastic glass. It's not glass, but some sort of uh, clear bubble over this. And I wanted to see if I could emulate that. And I can by using this stuff, the world's best canopy cement, they say on the container, but it also it dries crystal clear and really hard. So what I could do is after I get the steering wheel done and I paint this black with a white thing in the middle, then I'll put a drop of that inside the bezel on the steering wheel, and that will sort of look like that. The other thing that needs to be done with the steering wheel is that the steering wheel that came with the kit is not like this. The steering wheel is the stock steering wheel, which is holes drilled here instead of being drilled out completely. And I need to fix that because the steering wheel is just a really obvious. I mean, you can just see it; it sticks out there, right, in the model. And if it's wrong, then that's a problem. I'll play around with that too. So I'm going to be doing I'm just going to do a mishmash of things today in probably what will be a very inefficient order of things. It will be an inefficient order of things. And that's just the way it's going to be. Let's see, this brace. This brace came out pretty well. I used a glossier black than the rest of it. So that's good. Why is there a white spot there? Is that dust? Yeah. I probably should put this in the box with the other parts that are pretty much ready to go. Well, here, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, like I said, be really inefficient and just sort of bounce around from one thing to the other and clean brushes when it's time to clean brushes and maybe knock some things over too. Do that. Haven't done that in a while. But first I'm going to use the other brush. And I'm going to put leave this sitting here in the middle of everything. Put the second coat on the seats. And remove those. Here. And put the second coat on the silver part. I'm using this silver paint instead of the metallic paint because, like I said, it didn't adhere to the spray paint very well. As I'm stirring the paint, I am trying to think through how I am going to cut out the parts on the steering wheel that need to be cut out. I don't know how I'm going to do that. We will find out together when I get around to attempting it. Really, it'd be good if this was slightly thinner. It's going to need a third coat. It looks like it actually might. I do not know what the problem is here. Now, the second coat looks better than the first, but it's still not right. This is annoying. Really? What? Did I do that? I do not know how I did that. Oh, I even got the brush there. a spot of the silver paint on the black. I don't know how I did that. Probably have to get a tiny dot of black paint and hope it matches well enough. It's way down at the bottom where it doesn't show too much, but I don't know how that happened. Happening? Like, how am I possibly doing that? Sorry. Just, how am I getting the brush in those even getting it? I shouldn't even be able to get the brush in those spots. Okay, if today is going to go like this is going to be a bad painting day. Okay, this may need a third coat. To end up looking right, especially here for this side. It's just for some reason this spot here is refusing to be covered. I don't want to just keep building up paint. Um, One thing I'm going to try here, I don't know if this is going to work or if it's just going to be a bad idea. Could, so far, everything's been a bad idea. Um, I really would like that paint to be just a tiny, tiny bit thinner. And one way I can do that is I can mix a little water with it, but I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to take an itty bit of this isopropyl alcohol. Pretty much, I'm just going to get it on the brush here and mix it. When I paint some other things, when I try to paint some things like the bezels on the dials on the dashboard or the door handles or the window crank, okay, I paint those. I want this to be a little bit thinner. And I think that's working. Yeah, so I'm going to remember to do that. That paint's going to be just wasted, unless it's still okay when I do a third coat on the seats. And you'll say, well, why don't I just use that on here since I've already got it instead of messing around with a different kind of paint? And the answer to that is, you're right. Why not? Why not just use this since I've got it instead of messing around with a different kind of paint? And so taking your advice. Thank you. That's what I'm going to do. And then, as I said way back at the beginning, I want to keep the metallic kind of consistent through the model. And this is the color, this is the paint I'm using for the other metallics because it does adhere better to the black spray paint. And with it a little bit thinned, like I just thinned it, except for the little lumps that are forming in it. Yeah, it's behaving pretty well. And then this will eventually dry, and then I can paint the knobs and things with the flat black, and hopefully get the border between the two colors exactly right, so I don't have to try to touch it up. Getting impatient now and deciding I'm going to use this and do the one more coat again. Yeah, I think that'll do. Yep, I almost messed it up. Did I get paint on my finger? Yeah, I did. I touched the side of it. Was it not okay? It's not doing what it needs to do up here because it's all gummed up. Maybe water would be a better idea. The alcohol just evaporates too quickly and the paint gums up really fast. And just not behaving here. Okay, I'm going to leave that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to see how this mixes with water. I think that's actually going to be better. I'll have to remember that. Just to thin it with water um, rather than the alcohol, because the alcohol evaporates too quickly and then misses the point of what I was attempting to have a point do. Okay, well, there's that. I'll paint some flat black. I'll just keep using this brush because these are pretty tiny parts. Oh, maybe not. I'm going to back off what I just said. And I'm going to use this little bitty brush to paint the parts on the stick shift. I'm going to get a slightly broader bristle brush because I think it will work more quickly on the parts that just need to be all black. Come on. Oh, really cool. So this later today you get to play the Haroon session. Um, I don't know if I think this is just a Monday, and I just managed to get touch the brush to a place where it was almost impossible for it to actually touch, but it did to get the metallic paint on the black. I don't know somehow. Oh, that's pretty exciting. You get to the whole party gets to see your home. I think that's pretty cool. Something really to look forward to. Thanks for joining in on a Monday. I appreciate that. I was really late getting started because um, this it didn't connect to the internet. I had to call in technical help. DM Alexis was available this morning and came in and moved some cables around and then moved them back to where they were, and then it worked. It was why didn't it work before and why did it work now? Nobody knows. It's one of those computer related mystery things. Ah, okay. You'll get to role play all of that today. So hopefully this will all work out. Paint these little bits. I'm hoping they stay on the tape. The forest cottage. That's really nice. Yep. I hope they find it pleasant there. So they don't live in the castle, they live near it. Ah, okay, because she grew up away from people in the forest. That makes sense. So will the other players then meet your family? Is that part of what's going to happen? Are your friends, are Haroon's friends, are they still in the area? Will you be like reunited with them during the session when you go home? You get an opportunity to do that? No, the only good thing that's happened so far, and I will hopefully not jinx it, is that I haven't lost anything yet. Huh, that would be kind of fun to meet your childhood friends. I'm going to put on my head magnifiers for this bit because I have to be careful about the boundary between the two colors. Monday thing, I put them on and the lenses aren't here. Okay. Yeah, so the DM has some background information about Haroon and her friends. Okay. That'll be interesting to play out. I hope the session goes really well. Oh, that'll be interesting to see if they resume their little friendly battles. Silver paint didn't cover. and it looked okay until I put the head magnifiers on, and it definitely did not look okay. Hmm. And that was kind of mediocre. I think it'd be kind of interesting to get together with them, exchange stories, that kind of thing. And hopefully other party members will become friends with them as well. Sorry, I need to really pay close attention to what I'm doing here on the shift knob. What would be really cool is if I could somehow paint the shift pattern in on the top of the knob. That's going to be way beyond my skill level. Okay, well, it is pretty funny. That's pretty cool. I'm sure they'll have a lot of fun joking about that when they meet. Okay? Other than the silver paint looking like it's not covering very well. That's too bad. alligator clips are really slippery, smooth metal, and they're very slippery in my fingers. And it just feels like they're going to pop out of my hand at any moment. Okay, I need to touch up the silver paint because it just really looks terrible. It didn't cover, not very well at all. The rest of it looks okay. Now there was a spot in one of these cars seats. Silver paint looks okay now. Yeah, I need to let these dry. These need to get flipped over. Hmm, bandage them up. Oh, there's a lot of paint around the rim of this. That really should be probably scraped off at some point. The paint kind of oozes around the edges of the cap on the inside of the cap and then gets on the top of the bottle, and then it doesn't seal that well, or it does seal and it um, grabs and the cap sticks to it. That's what I was attempting to say. See if I can get this into this little sleeve without ruining the tip. Oh, that time I did. Yay. So these need to dry just a little bit before I flip them over and finish painting them. I'm gonna move on to this now because the oh, that's a good one. So you could start with just like a little seedling, just barely germinated seed, and end up with a full plant. Wonder get this through these. That divot just really causing a problem here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the car body. I don't know if you remember, but on Friday I filled in these circles with this green stuff. And I'm going to sand this now, and I want to see how well it holds up in something that's very shallow. Okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to use quite coarse sandpaper. I'm going to use the 400 grit on this because I want it to go. I want it to actually get done sometime in my lifetime. Maybe I'll even use the 320. No, do I have any 400 left? I used up all my 400s. I've got 150. That would be very rough. I'm going to try this. Weeping Roses. Okay, thorny roses would be that would be interesting. You could use that almost as a weapon. No, it was a mistake putting that much on there. I thought I was being clever to make sure it would fill the hole in completely, but it just it just turns this into a real slog. It's going to take forever. Okay, well, I'm going to be sanding green putty for a long time here because I put on way too much. It's hard to reach. I suppose I could have thought this through a little better when I did this, but I didn't. I didn't think this through really well at all. Yeah. So, um, apologizing in advance. What's going to be happening here is that for the next million years, I'm going to be sanding this green putty that I put on way too heavily when I was attempting to fill in these mold marks, and my sanding block isn't really working very well. This is definitely Monday. Okay, this is without a doubt 100% a Monday today. In, in terms of how poorly everything is going. I wanted the headliner to not have these circles in them, so I've replaced the inset circles with a big blob of green stuff that needs to be sanded down to the surface of the rest of it. And it just, it did its job. It dried very hard. And now I'm paying the price for my lack of foresight. This would be better with a sanding block because I don't want to sand it out of the divot. Wow, yeah, this is just going to take a long time. No, it it tried it tried really hard to dry hard, and it succeeded. And it probably dried so hard that I'm probably going to end up sanding it out of the place where I filled it in. This is just not going to go well. Well, eventually it'll get, with enough persistence, as long as the edges don't crack too much. With enough persistence, eventually you get done. This is one of those things where it's just keep at it uh, until it's uh, okay. And that's as good as this is going to get. It's just okay. So I tried to fix something that was a flaw in the way the model was made, and it just made a mess of it. I mean, it's not going to be like a fatal thing. It's not going to hurt the model. It isn't going to be any worse than it was if I hadn't done this. But I wouldn't also be spending many, many hours, many, many minutes, hopefully not hours. I don't want to be spending hours doing this. It might be a couple hours. It might be like the whole rest of the stream. It might even go until Wednesday before I get this right. Probably would work better. I could keep the sandpaper actually on the surface to be sanded instead of it sliding off of this little block. Because the balsa doesn't abrade anything. And that's what happens when the paper slides off of it, is I'm just rubbing it with the balsa wood, and that is accomplishing nothing. So I just need to use my fingers. Almost everything about this is just, what I was, not quite what I was hoping. But what I have learned is that this is dried hard enough that I'm going to actually use this on the divot on the top of the dashboard and see if this won't finally resolve that problem. No, it's just a fail. It's an epic fail because it's coming out of the divot here. And what I'm ending up doing, what I probably should have just done in the first place, was just sanded the divot, because it's right here. You can see the edge of it here that it's been sanded off, and here it's coming down. Because it's not really adhering. It's giving me a nice clear picture of the edge of the circle. I can tell when the circle's gone, but this just didn't work. Okay, well, this is just this was just a waste of. This is going to be a waste of about an hour as I sand the green stuff out and then sand the circles down, which is what I could have done in the beginning, and I decided I'd try to fill them instead because they're fairly deep. But it is it is what it is, and this is what it is. I just need to make sure that I sand the entire headliner, the top of the thing here, um, with the same sandpaper grip, and then polish it the same way so that to the extent that it shows at all, it'll have the same sort of texture. And it's okay if it's kind of a rough texture because in reality it should be a fabric of some sort. Okay, well there's one messy thing done, and go on to the next one here. I wonder, if I can speed up the process by just sort of cutting it away, maybe. I want to cut into the plastic, but if I can cut away, maybe, you know, 70% of it or so. Great. Okay, well, I guess what the good thing is that I haven't done any permanent damage to anything on the model. Haven't succeeded in making it look okay, but certainly looks messy now. I've made I've made it messier than it was. Now, after I'm done scratching away with this, and of course, the most visible part is the most impossible to reach, right? Why would that be the case? How could that possibly be true? Yeah, so I'm ending up doing in a more difficult fashion what I could have just done in a simpler fashion by doing it this way in the first place, which is to sand out the circles instead of trying to fill them. And then I'll have to just spend a good deal of time kind of after I clean it, polishing it. How did I get it the other side without seeing that I didn't sand this very well here? They'll rotate the work and you can see where it's a mess. How much time have I wasted on this? 11:30 already? Great. Yeah. Well, thank you for being so understanding, Amon. So if you're a master modeler, you probably could be chuckling now. If you're just not a modeler at all, you could probably be chuckling now about how, well, that didn't work. That's not a surprise. It never would have worked. Why did we even try that? It was a dumb idea. But you'd say, I don't know, I don't know. You know, it was worth a try, but it didn't work out. So there it goes. Now you're doing your best to fix it by spending a lot of time getting rid of molding circles on a part of the model that, unless you're you wouldn't even look at it and you wouldn't even notice that they were there. But I am, and I did because I find those circles to be incredibly annoying things. Just amazingly, horribly annoying. Given this experience, I'm going to, when I, with the divot in the tachometer pod, I'm going to squeeze that hard enough, I'm going to break it. That would just be great. This one's really, this is a really deep one. Of course, they would just get worse and worse as things progressed here, wouldn't they? Yep, of course they would. As I'm doing this, I have to remind myself, okay, what if, I think I've talked about this before, doing this kind of sanding stuff and how tedious it is. Okay, so you're building a cathedral, right? And you want a mosaic floor. And this is a huge floor. It's just like hundreds and hundreds of square feet, thousands of square feet. And and the mosaics are made out of pieces of stone. And each of them is maybe an inch square, an inch on a side. I don't know what that is in centimeters, for those of you who use metric. 2 centimeters or something, maybe. And and then they need to be the same thickness, and they need to be polished. And your job is to use abrasives that are not nearly as good as this. Probably just bank sand or something, sand that you dug up somewhere. And your life is every day you go and you spend hours and hours rubbing at these little pieces of stone to make them exactly the right size and the right thickness, and then polishing the tops of them so that they're shiny. So compared to that, this is nothing. Trying to put this in perspective. Oh, I shouldn't be complaining that much about this because I could be laboring away attempting to make mosaic tiles for the floor of a cathedral. That would be an interesting stream, wouldn't it? Get about 2 of those done, well, 1 an hour. I don't know how fast they would be. I'm getting this green shards everywhere. Okay, well, I've got a cleaning challenge. Well, what I've decided is I'm not going to use this green stuff on the tachometer pod. I could put yet another coat of the stuff I have been using on there. Look at this other filler. I might just try that. See how it turns out. Put it on pretty soon here, and then come back to it Wednesday. Well, when I'm finally done getting these circles sanded, at least, so that they're not showing nearly as much as they were before. I'm getting, I'm getting closer to that point, closer than when I started. That's a good thing, right? Um, what will I do next? I'm going to put a second coat of silver paint on the stick shift uh, shaft. I'll do that because looking at it through the head magnifier, it very clearly did not cover very well. Well, I ended up doing what I was planning to avoid doing, which is sanding the circles down. I need to clean this and get another grade of paper, probably the 1,000 grit. Try to get it so that the surface is a little less rough than it is at the moment. Just with some water, get it all over my pants. Got an appointment later too. I'm gonna go in with dirty pants. Yeah, I guess you can kind of, it's kind of on screen as I'm kind of washing this. Okay, well, this is just a mess here. I'm going to some of this trash pile here. Trash pile, in the trash pile. Get some 1,000 grit here. And I'm gonna try to change the texture of this so it's not quite as rough. okay if it's not. Yeah, it's just the headliner. I just want it uniform. I just wanted a uniform, um, not quite glossy. I start these things and at the beginning of the stream, I think, oh, I'm not going to have enough to do to fill the stream. And then I do something like this. Okay. And then it's, oh, I'm not going to get done what I thought I would get done because this took too much time. And if you don't know what all of this is about, up in the top of the headliner here, there's these circles that come from the molding process. And there were four of them, one in each corner. There were, I sanded them away. And they're just, totally inauthentic, right? They're just, that shouldn't be there in the car. And so I wanted them to go away, and I thought I could fill them and sand the filler, but that didn't work because they were just too shallow. Okay. Well, this whole thing will need to be very thoroughly washed before it's primed, which I can probably do. I can probably do that. As I said, I can let me wash this and then I'll prime it between now and Wednesday. There'll need to be a lot of taping on this. This will need to be polished. Okay. Yeah, so thoroughly clean. This is the thoroughly cleaning I'm going to be doing here now. Getting this wet and then getting the sanding dust off of this. This needs to be primed inside and out. Okay. The part of the body here, the part of the inside of this will actually end up showing in the model. And that needs to be painted black to match the interior. And then the inside of the engine bay here, that'll also need to be painted black to match the inside of the engine bay. Okay. And then that will all need to be taped and masked so that the body can be painted white. And then after it's painted white, the stripes will be masked and it'll be painted blue so that it should end up, what it should end up with is blue with white racing stripes. That's how it should end up. And it might. I mean, there's a chance. There's a chance that this could come together, and that's how it will end up. Okay, I've got. Where did I put the boxes? This is the box of parts that are mostly ready to be either they are assembled or they're going to be assembled. And they include the radiator, the inside here. This is all assembled. It's the bottom of the car. This is the body that goes on that, like that. And then the shell of the thing that I was working on goes on top of that. This needs some detail painted. It needs to have the um, the door handles and the window cranks painted silver. I don't know what's going on here. There's yet just problems. Just always a problem. But I don't know if you can see them, but there's little raised bits here, black on black, that need to be painted. silver, and I tried to do that and made a mess of it. So I need to come back and try that later. And the edges of the pedals need to be painted that same color because they are metal with like a rubber insert. But I'm not going to work on that today. It just isn't going to work. So if I can get the door handles and the window cranks painted silver, then I can install the seats. They go in like this, like that. Really, the chrome, this chrome part goes on the outside. It'll be installed like that. Yeah, that's nice. It doesn't. I don't know why it doesn't fit. Maybe it's like that. Maybe it's like that. Maybe that's the front. Yeah, that's the front of the seat, not the back. That's how it goes. Probably look at the instructions and see. Really would have thought. If you're sitting back here, you can't. No, it's way too far back. Yeah, the front of the seat goes there. And somehow you reach a shift lever. I don't know. Just doesn't seem like it's right. They tell you to put the seats in after the steering wheel instead of before. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But they're not going in yet because I need to paint the detail. And I scratched, and in doing that, I managed to scratch the paint all over the place. And it was painted nicely too. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you mess with stuff, is it gets messed up. Okay, so those are there. This bit can go in here. Um, oh, I'll put it down here. So, a couple of things. This These need to be painted on the other side. So I'm going to flip them over and paint the other side black before I forget that it needs to be done. These are finished and they need to go into a place where they won't. I'm just going to put them in here and hopefully they won't get lost. This needs some silver touch up. These need to be painted black. This needs to be filled in. Um, I'm going to I'm going to try this. I'm going to use the same filler I've been using a third time. I did this on the rear view, the side view mirrors on the Lotus Ford. Eventually, it worked. It took like 4 or 5 different applications, but eventually it did. use again. If I label it, I know what the grid is. Yeah, toothpicks. I ran out of toothpicks. Huh. How about that? Flipping this so that I can I want it to stay kind of upright. I cobble something together here. That's perfect. Okay. It's kind of tall. It's up really high, but the orientation is just right. Take this and put another application of this liquid dissolved putty. And since it's dissolved, it tends to shrink. I'll put a blob of it on there and just keep trying. Keep trying until it's maybe down. Maybe what I'm aiming for is that it's shallow enough that I can sand the whole thing flat. Okay, I'm going to paint the black. These black. And then I'm going to touch up the silver on that. The detail on these will be that the hose clamps on the radiator hose and the cap on the washer fluid reservoir will be painted what's called chainmail silver, which is the same color of metallic that I used for the radiator cap. And just try to keep that consistent. So I just use little bits of tape to hold these onto the cardboard so that I could, do this, rotate it and make sure I got all the surfaces painted, which I probably am not doing. I'll probably have to do some touch up on these anyway. But At least I'm, attempting. I get them painted. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do next is that this jar has a buildup of paint around the rim, which is keeping it from sealing quite as well as it should. And so I'm going to attempt to scrape that off. I've done this with paints before, and it like 90, it almost always worked. I hardly ever messed up. So we'll see if I can mess up today. The idea is to, and you'll need to do this probably, is take an X-Acto knife, that's what I use, and scrape away from the bottle because I don't want the dry paint to get into the good paint. But I also want to hold on to the bottle pretty tightly because I don't want it to end up spilling, like being knocked over and spilling a giant glob of paint everywhere. But you can see how much paint is built up on the rim of the bottle. And that means it doesn't seal, and then the solvent in the paint starts to evaporate and the texture of the paint changes. Like this is getting close to getting to that point. Texture of the paint changes and it doesn't paint well. Pretty much what happens is it pulls itself away from the surface. That's the thing I have run into with this is that as the solvent evaporates, the paint gets sort of, I'll just say it's gummy, and put some paint on the surface, but then paint the next one, and you're supposed to paint from the unpainted into the painted, and it just pulls the paint away from the surface, making for a disaster that needs to be wiped off and sanded off and redone. There. No, the mess is on here, and I can close. Well, actually, it would be really good is if I actually, that last remaining toothpick has disappeared. Am I going to remember to get toothpicks? Probably not. I'm just going to try to wipe the paint out of the rim of the bottle there, which is not succeeding. I managed to get paint. Well, that's good. Look at that. Yep, that was a mess. So now I'm going to spend some time cleaning my hand. Well done. Just beautiful. X-Acto knife. I have made a serious mess here. In my efforts to clean something, my effort to clean something completely backfired. And instead of cleaning, what I did was I got paint all over my finger, all over the X-Acto knife. Carefully cleaning it, not toward the edge, but away from the edge. There, I didn't cut myself. At least that. Now I got a black mess on my finger. It's going to take a while to get that out from under my nail. I found the toothpick anyway. Guess that's something. What happened to your finger? Oh, I stuck it in the paint. Why did you do that? don't know, I hadn't done that, during the stream yet. Thought the viewers were missing that, so I made sure that I made a significant mess at least once. Um, no, I didn't touch anything that shouldn't have been painted black with my black painted finger. Something to be said for that. It was confined. Okay, well, just in an effort to finish some things, I'm going to put a second coat of silver paint on the, wow, yeah, on the stick shift shaft there. Leave this toothpick out. Maybe I'll remember some down again. Probably not. Well, in my failure to think ahead really well, well, I'll get to that in a bit. Let me get this paint on here. It looks so awful under magnification and not really bad when it's not. I don't know. I have no explanation for that. What I have not apparently thought through as well as I could. It's like, oh, what is going on now? Why is the paint surface so rough? Yeah, that paint really needs to be thinned. Well, I think that's going to look okay. I've been going through those serious paste today. Clean this in a little alcohol. don't know if that, I keep saying I've seen that. I don't know if that makes a difference. Swishing it like that, I don't think it does. But it feels like something is happening. Should be happening. Okay. Well, when these bits are dried, um, I think I'll wait until Wednesday to paint the detail, the cap on the reservoir here. This is the bag that holds the window washer fluid, and the hose clamps on the hose, the radiator hose. I'm going to paint those on Wednesday. I'm going to be using slightly darker shade. I'm going to use this stuff called chainmail silver, which is the color that I used on the radiator cap. Okay. This is going to dry, cure again, and I'll sand it and see if the divot can't be made to disappear a little bit more than it has so far. I've got it maybe 80%. I'm going to prime this between now. Take these out of the box. I'm going to prime this on the bottom and the top. And there's another bit that needs to be primed. This needs to be primed. This is the steering wheel column with the turn signal indicator on it. That had broken off, and I successfully reattached it. But what I really need to do is have, what I really need is this, so that I can put it in here like that. I suppose I could do that. I could clamp it to the side of the box. I use this box just to carry parts back and forth. I spray paint things in the garage where there's more air and it's a little better ventilated than spray painting down here in this room. I guess I could try that. So these are going to get primed. Those parts are going to dry and they'll get detailed. I want to put them here. Let me get this. I'm going to put this box in another place. Okay. I need to do some cleaning up. I put my head magnifiers in the head magnifier. Sorry, I'm be off camera, but things got very much out of control again. So I'm cleaning up. I'm off camera, cleaning up, so I can put things from where they are into the place where they're being cleaned up. If I need this box out of the way, so I can move this box in the way, at least momentarily. And these bits here, I'm just going to leave here while they're drying. Can't tell. That's just paint that hasn't dried yet. If worst comes to worst, I will touch up with the black paint again. I might need to do that after yeah, there's a spot there. Why am I getting spots? Okay. Well, the black will have to be touched up, and I'll probably need to do that after I paint the clamps and the radiator and the cap. Anyway, Those will probably need touching up. And so I'll just do that at that time. These can stay in here. These are parts. Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, what am I going to do with the rest of the time? Well, what I am going to do, these are really annoying things to work with. Are these springs? The springs have mold seams all along the side, which makes them look not like springs. So I'm going to do those. And actually, I need to work inside this box. This box that I was using to hold the parts. Uh, describe here. I'm going to work on because I could drop them, and then that would be a problem. I want to put this back here while I'm doing that. Set this aside. So the steering wheel. The problem with the steering wheel is pretty obvious, and hopefully I'll be able to pull this off. You can see that the steering wheel here, the spokes of the steering wheel are not like this. These are drilled with holes, and these have no holes. So what needs to be done is that the basically the holes need to be connected by cutting out the plastic between the holes and then smoothing the sides, the insides, so that this ends up looking like that. And it is different enough, significantly different enough, okay, that is not that. And it needs I need to fix it. And hopefully I'll be able to do that by very, very carefully cutting away the plastic between the holes and then very, very carefully somehow getting even the insides. And then the center is, you can see this is painted black with a white insert. And there's just this divot in the middle. And I'm going to paint that white and then use that clear material to put a drop inside to make it kind of covered over. So this is going to end up taking a million years, and hopefully I won't break it. I don't know. I haven't done that kind of thing before, and we'll just see how it goes. Hopefully I'll be able to just be careful enough, easily, just do it tiny, tiny, tiny little increments of cutting and sanding that I'll be able to open up those spokes. First, the springs, since I've got time left in the stream. Um, I don't know if you can even see them, but they're really obvious if you get the light on them right, that there's the mold, the seam ridges are just all over the spring. And it's not just that they're on the outside, the spring, you in this light, they're really obvious, but it's not just that they're there, but they are also on the inside. So they need to come off the outside and then off the inside. And I've found that really these needle files are the only way to do it because sandpaper won't get in there very well. I'll just lightly file the outside. I don't want to make it not round, but I also don't want the mold marks showing. ones on the Lotus Ford were actually worse than this because they were chrome plated in addition, and so that had to come off evenly. So, yeah. So the springs, I think I'm gonna try to get a little bit detail-y on these springs. The springs over shocks. Is I'm gonna paint them flat black, okay? And then I'm gonna highlight the outside edges of the springs, the coil, with a gloss so that the spring is highlighted against the shock underneath it. Why not? You know, this is another one of those things that no one's gonna see, but I've got all year to build this model, really. In December, when I chose this to be the next one, I said this could end up taking the better part of this next year, all of 2026 to do this. So, yeah, I'm gonna do what I can, to do that with these. I was able to do that with a Lotus Ford is, I painted it black and then highlighted the springs with aluminum paint so that they looked metallic, but these would have been painted black. The springs would have been painted black. Seam off of the attachment here. It's really on there. No, it's mostly off. You get it actually pretty well on this side. At least the file, fits in the grooves pretty well. in terms of shape and size. That helps. So I can get it in there without distorting the shape, which is important. I probably could look at these through the head magnifier and I would see how well I did. But let me at least get them roughed in before I go that far. But I probably will. I probably will do that because when they're painted, especially if I use kind of a glossy black on them, yeah, the remnants of the mold marks will definitely show. But my tired old eyes, it looks like it's coming along pretty well compared to the way it was when I started. Suppose if I get these, I could almost prime these now. I don't know if they're ready though, because then I'll have to refile them and reprime them if they're not. So I'm just going to say they're, the 90% done, and then the head magnifier. Um, Look at them before I prime and paint them. So I don't want to do it over again. I'd rather wait. I'd rather wait a couple of days because it's just February now. I still got several months. I have months yet before the end of the year to get this finished. I still, as I rotate this, it still shows, and I can't tell exactly why. I get this down deep if it's on the edges of the springs. Yes, that's why I'm going to use the head magnifier, right? I'm going to put this one back in here, lose it, and then spend a little time here doing the next one. And then wrap it up for the day. Yeah, I'm sure that when I look at it under magnification, I'll see that there's still yet more to be done, but I can get quite a bit done without them. And then do that later. Oh yeah, here I didn't check that on the other one. I should get that one out and look. The Yeah, just when you think you're getting close to being done, and you find out that you missed a significant spot right there where that comes up. The end of it, and that can show pretty significantly, and it's yeah, there's a big ridge there, and probably on this end too. Yeah, that's better. It's sort of on camera too. How about that? It's really small. You can't. These parts are little, um, and I can't make them any bigger. So I could probably put the camera down closer, but then it would be in the way of me seeing what I'm doing. So this is usually if I'm on camera at all, that's I consider that to be a victory. Um, there have been times when everything I'm doing wasn't on camera. Yeah, there have been times I've been, going on for maybe half an hour talking about what I was doing and how it was going, and then I look up and my director and camera person have failed again, and none of it was visible the entire time. Yeah, that's that's a feature of this stream is the high production quality and value. Um, yeah, it's getting to where I need to start talking about Super Chicken and Underdog and Tom Terrific. Doing a retrospective on cartoon superheroes. There were some pretty cool ones then. There was one I really, really liked when I was young. I don't know if you can I think you can still find it. Probably you can almost find everything that was ever recorded ever by looking at the internet. It was called Supercar, and it wasn't animated. It was marionettes. Yeah, but that's not much of a thing anymore. Marionettes are puppets on strings. Okay, they're manipulated. They're jointed, multi-jointed, and the puppeteer is up above them with wooden paddles with the strings attached. And by moving those paddles around like that, okay, they make the marionette move. And that's that's actually the classic version of a puppet show, are the marionettes. Well, this show was done with that. They were wooden, you know, marionettes with clothes on them and dressed up like that. Um, and you knew that they were marionettes because you could actually see the strings that were attached to them, making them move. But that didn't matter. But what was cool about Supercar, which is why I really wanted one, is that Supercar could go anywhere. It was a car, So it would go on, on a road, you could do that. Hardly anyone ever did it. Hardly ever just drove as a car though. But it could also it could fly. It had extended wings and it could fly. So that was good. And actually there were real cars. They never really caught on because they were expensive and kind of weird. But you could buy a car with that towed a trailer, and the trailer had its wings, and you could drive to a place where you could attach the wings and take off. So flying cars, I think there's probably still every once in a while tries to make one, but you could get them back in, I think in the 60s, they made a couple that were actually in production. They'd sell a dozen of them or something, not very many. But supercar could fly. Supercar could also go on the water. Okay. And that was actually also a thing. There weren't any real cars that could both fly in addition to being a car. There weren't any real cars that could both fly and be a boat, but you could have one or the other. And there were cars made again, I think in the 60s that they were actually commercially made. You could buy one. I've seen one at a car show. They still exist. Sometimes you can see them in commercials for certain products. Um, but yeah, it had a little propeller on the back, and the doors, they were convertible. The doors sealed well enough that it mostly kept most of the water out, so you could drive. But supercar did both of those things. It could, in addition to being the car, it could um, be a boat and an airplane. But even better, and there weren't any cars that actually did this, not that I know of anyway. A supercar could also be a submarine, so you could drive it into the water like a boat, but then you could go down underwater. So it was, I mean, pretty super, right? That you could drive it, which like I said, hardly ever happened in the show. Why would you just drive it, right? But it could fly, and it could be a boat, and it could be a submarine. And because they were marionettes, when it was a submarine, that was always kind of interesting to have. I don't remember how they did the water effect, how they made it look like it was underwater, but the top needed to stay open despite the fact that it was underwater because the marionettes that were in the car, still had to be moved by the strings. And if they closed the top of the car off, then the strings wouldn't go through, and then you couldn't move them. So one had to suspend disbelief, when watching this show because the marionette thing still had to work. Yeah, so I thought having a supercar, that would be super, and it would be push button controlled, right? You would just push a button that said fly. Maybe it would have a like blue with a cloud on it or something, right? And then drive and boat and submarine, like a push button transmission, except it would be a push button transformation. So yeah, if I remember that, which I won't, I should go online, where everything exists forever, and see if this supercar is still there. I'm pretty sure I looked this up once before. There is a Wikipedia section about supercar. It even talks about who the characters were, what their names were, and there was always, a professor kind of person who was in charge of the science part, and there was always a boy, because boys would watch Supercar. I guess girls didn't back then. That wasn't a thing. I guess. But there was in that kind of show, there was almost always a boy that you could, identify with. I don't remember if there was a pet or not. It would be the kind of show where you would expect there to be a dog, and maybe there was. Maybe I'll look it up. Maybe you all can look it up. Okay, well, I'm done messing with this for today. It's not done. I need to look at it, like I said, through my head magnifier. Just as I rotate this, I can still get little glints of changes in the reflectivity where there's still some of the molding seam still in existence, but it's hard to see. But with my head magnifier, it will jump out. It'll pop out and be obvious. And then I can spend another, half hour fiddling around with this before I prime it and paint it. Put that in there. So the challenge for this week is going to be to paint the door handles on the inside of the body of the car. Those really just need to be done, and I can't really put it off any longer without attempting to do it, because nothing can be assembled until those are finished. So that'll be a thing I'll probably try on Wednesday early in the stream while I still have focus and eye-hand coordination. Okay, so I'm going to try that. I'm going to sand this to see if, in fact, I can get rid of the divot on the top of the tack pot. And if I can, then I'll reprime this and start the process of, once that's done, I'll reprime it, and then I'm going to tape over the parts that are the dashboard, because I'm going to hand paint those, and I'll paint the rest of that the spray paint black. This is finished. I'll just let the paint dry, and I'll put it in the done box. This needs to be primed. Now I'm going to put it in the to be primed box. And then the steering wheel, I need to, well, I'll just leave it in there. I need to cut out the bits between the holes so that it looks like the authentic one. So there. So that's stuff that will be done on Wednesday. I'll just keep plugging along. I mean, every time I get something done, even if it's out of sequence or it doesn't make sense in terms of getting the whole thing completed, every time I get a little something done, it's closer to being finished than it was before I got those things done. Such a deal. I've got other things to do. Yeah, like painting the radiator clamps and the cap for the window washer fluid, all that kind of stuff. But these, I'm going to just, I wish there was a better way of doing this. I don't know what I'm going to do. getting something. No, it really isn't the best way to do it. So try this. I don't know if this will work or not. What I want is I want us to be able to clamp. I want to be able to clamp this bit onto a vertical. But inside the box. Maybe I can. This needs to stand up to get primed on all sides, but I'm using standard upper for another purpose. Here, this might work. So I was thinking about doing is clamping it to here like that, but then it would be outside the box. And I want it inside the box so that in case it comes off. Okay, well, this is turning into quite a to-do. Here, that'll work. Now I can spray that. And I can spray this. Just on the workbench and spray it. And then after that's dried, I'll flip it over and do the other side. So one way or the other, somehow between now and Wednesday, these bits will be primed. That will mean that I can start taping this, masking the inside of this in the engine bay. Well, those need to be painted black. I don't want the whole thing painted black. I'm thinking this through. I don't want to brush paint those. I paint the whole thing white and then mask it to paint it black. Okay. To do this now, I'd have to mask the whole thing except the part that's being painted black, and then mask the black parts and paint it white. Or I'd have to mask the white parts. Now, paint it black, and mask the black and paint it white. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to paint all mask all the white parts first and then paint this stuff black that needs to be painted black. Yeah, it's not good there. Well, it's just too big to avoid. Because I'm going to have to paint, if I painted it white and then black, I'd have to mask the white parts anyway. This way I can mask the white parts. Okay, and if the black paint gets onto them, I can scrape the black off. Because otherwise, I need to be, yeah, yep. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to prime this and then mask everything except the parts that are going to be painted black, the engine bay and the inside. And then I'm going to mask the parts that were painted black, which would be fairly easy to do, and then painted white, and then mask where the stripes are going to be, and then painted blue. And then there's little details like the windshield wiper arms and the wiper blades. These are okay. The caps on the battery, I paint those yellow, and then one is red and one is black. Just a whole bunch of little junk. Okay, that's it for today. That's enough. Just had like one or two sort of disasters, a waste of time, something that didn't work. That I wasted an hour fixing. Um, I got some painting done that went okay. I did some sanding and some filing that went kind of okay. Well, as usual, I didn't get very much done, but took a long time to do it and had to redo some things that I had done initially. And probably the same thing will happen Wednesday. So I'll see you on Wednesday as I continue to plug along. Two steps forward, one step back, three steps forward, one step back. There's always a back step as I begin to as I continue to work on the GT-350 thing here. Okay. I will see you on Wednesday. Thanks for joining in. Take care. Oh yeah, be sure to watch our Dungeons and Dragons show. Dyson Dungeons brings you Dungeons and Dragons show. It is an amazing show. Watch it, catch it on YouTube, uh, listen to it as a podcast. Do that. I'll see you.